Things are looking up for Detroit fans. Rodgers is out of the division, you've just won your first division title since 1993, and you have a star-studded roster littered with young talent.
And it's been 30 years! 30 years! Enjoy,
After decades of lackluster performances, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have produced a serious contender, and the thoughts of raising a Lombardi trophy have gotten even closer after an outstanding offseason in 2024. The Lions are for real, and that target that they're aiming for is a Super Bowl. And this video today is brought to you by OddsJam. OddsJam is the top choice for data-driven sports betting, tracking over 260 sportsbooks in real time. With OddsJam, you're going to be using strategies similar to those employed by successful investors and traders. How does it work, you ask? Well, thanks to the OddsJam arbitrage tool, which identifies discrepancies in sports betting lines across the market. This tool finds arbitrage betting opportunities, guaranteeing risk-free profits by spotting these differences. You can even bet on both sides of the market and still make a profit. But that's not all. OddsJam also offers a positive EV calculator to help you optimize your betting sizes and a bet tracker to monitor your profits across all your sportsbook accounts. Using OddsJam, it's going to let you bet smarter and more responsibly, leading to long-term profitability. And luckily for you, they're so confident in their profit that they've offered a 7-day free trial. So if you're ready to try it out, use code KRICH for a 35% discount on your first month. Thanks for OddsJam for sponsoring this video, but let's hop back into the video. Most offseason winners tend to be the teams selecting near the top of the draft. They are the teams with the most room for improvement and the capital available to take significant steps forward. For example, Chicago picking the most exciting quarterback selection we have seen in years to be the face of their franchise, and then pairing him with an elite wide receiver prospect like Rome Odunze are going to be hard to beat. But there is one particular contender in the NFC that has quite literally had a perfect offseason.
I don't think they're going to be mentally broken after a tough NFC Championship game last year. I think they understand the authenticity of that locker room. They understand keeping their core guys together. I think this team takes a step forward. I think that they are going to be exactly where they were last year and probably one step beyond. I think they're going to be real deal Super Bowl contenders all year.
Now, if we go back to the NFC Championship game, the Detroit Lions appeared to be storming to the Super Bowl as they sat on a 24-7 lead at halftime in that game. The San Francisco 49ers were widely considered the favorites heading into that game, but now at halftime, the Lions were convincingly going to win that game. Unfortunately for Detroit, the Purdy-led 49ers proved their excellence by overcoming the joint largest deficit in an NFL Conference Championship game, denying the Lions their first Super Bowl appearance ever. It was a heartbreaking end to the season for Detroit, but one that also should fill fans with incredible optimism. Prior to the 2023 season, the Lions hadn't won a division title since 1993 and hadn't competed in a conference championship game since 1991. Like, to say the least, it was an exceptional year for the franchise, and one that previewed some things that we might be or just should be excited to see in the coming years for this team. And now with the perfect offseason now under their belt, it's safe to say that the Detroit Lions Super Bowl window is wide open. There are several key figures in the Detroit Lions front office who have helped propel them to prominence in the NFC. General Manager Brad Holmes took over the team in 2021, quickly establishing himself as a sharpshooter in the draft. His first class of rookies welcomed stars such as Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who have both received extensions to secure them as Lions for the foreseeable future. Aiden Hutchinson was the standout pick in 2022 before an epic draft class that featured Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, and Jack Campbell that all arrived in 2023. Like, those players have already proved to the team that they are quite literally some of the staples on that offensive and defensive units. And not only that, but some of these guys are even some of the best players in the NFL at their positions, or at least in the top 10 or 5. It's because of them that Detroit has been able to improve from a 3-13 record in 2021 to a 12-5 record in an NFC Championship appearance in 2023.
This might be one of the best rosters in the entire league now. You got defensive pass. Defense was not good enough, so they upped their ante with Terry Arnold in the draft. Added some pieces there, traded for Carlton Davis. DJ Reader is one of the sneakiest signings in free agency. He can really play a defensive line. So there's really no hole right now. They've paid Jared Goff. They paid everybody else. Dan Campbell's going to be there a long time, so they're going to extend his contract. So this is a team that's locked in and really expects nothing less than where they got last year.
Like, they have laid the foundations of being a serious contender in the NFC now. And now with the class of rookies that they just brought in from the 2024 draft, it's safe to say that this team is ready to go and win the Super Bowl now. Looking back on last year, the secondary was a clear weakness for Detroit in 2023, with Detroit's 247 yards conceded ranking 6th worst in the NFL. To counter that, Holmes selected not only one cornerback in the 2024 draft, but two. Both Teron Arnold and Enes Rekestra ranked inside the top 32 of Daniel Jeremiah's top prospects list, with Arnold landing at 9th. These guys can both immediately bolster the weakest part of the Lions roster, and the decision to double down at that position protects Detroit against the risk of one of these guys becoming a bust. Now, of course, the dream scenario is that both of these players do hit, and Detroit's secondary flips from being a weakness to a massive strength.
A lot of that was due to injuries on the back end, as well as some inconsistent play from their rehauled secondary. So they rehauled it again. And I think a lot of the additions they made were with an eye towards playing more man coverage, which we know their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, likes to do. And they don't have to pan out immediately. You draft two cornerbacks, Terrion Arnold and Enes Rekestra. They don't have to be amazing earlier on because of the cushion that offense gets you. But your hope is, by the end of the season, some combination of Carlton Davis, Arnold, Rekestra is enough to fix, a secondary that really struggled at times last year.
And as I went through who else they picked, most of the other picks that they did take were to solidify just the trenches and really try to get those guys all just ready to go for the season. Holmes didn't just look at the draft as an avenue for improving his team, also opting to bring in several other playmakers to shore up the defense. Detroit was 23rd in the NFL in terms of points conceded, so it should come as no surprise that this was the area that Holmes felt required the most attention. His mission to strengthen the secondary started early in the offseason with a trade for Buccaneers cornerback Carlton Davis. And look, just looking at Davis's game, it brings much needed quality and experience to the room after a solid 2 interception and 52 tackle season in 2023. Davis is particularly effective in man coverage throughout his career and will be a valuable veteran presence who can help get the rookies caught up to speed. Another cornerback in Amik Robertson was also added to the roster in free agency this year, emphasizing the effort that Brad Holmes has gone to address this position group. And while the secondary was a clear weak point for Detroit, it wasn't the only area that Holmes focused on. Detroit's 41 sacks placed them in the bottom third of the league, which combined with their dismal secondary was not going to be good enough to get them to that elusive Super Bowl ring. To tackle that particular area of need, Holmes signed Marcus Davenport to a 1-year deal. And look, I'm pretty familiar with this guy being a Saints fan who was formerly selected as a first rounder for them, but Davenport has not really lived up to the billing of a first round pick. But it's safe to say that he can add value to that defensive line across from Aiden Hutchinson. Davenport is familiar with Dan Campbell and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, who both were in New Orleans while Davenport was there, suggesting that they saw enough to believe that he could be a useful part of this defense. It's really tough for Davenport though, because he's just always been injured, and in 2023 he didn't do anything but pick up 2 sacks in those games that he did play. So I mean, a 1-year contract on an NFC contender could be the perfect motivation for him to re-find his best form and secure a bigger bag moving forward. Elsewhere on the defensive line, more quality was added in the form of DJ Reader, the dominant run-stuffing defensive tackle from Cincinnati. Like, we all know how hard-nosed the Lions are and just a tough team who are looking to dominate in the trenches, and Reader is the perfect fit for that identity. Detroit last year gave up just 3.8 yards per carry in 2023, and the addition of Reader will ensure that they can continue to restrict opposing offenses on the ground. Reader had an 82.2 grade from PFF last year, suggesting that there is plenty still left in his tank for the 29-year-old. Overall though, they really just have bolstered this defense that was already pretty good, but now they're trying to really just make it an elite defense. And yes, of course, between the offensive unit and the defensive unit, we can easily say that the defensive unit was the part that needed more work, but after the additions of just rookies and veterans that they've added to their roster now, it's going to help them in that Super Bowl push this season. And look, like, the NFC North is absolutely stacked at quarterback talent this year, especially with all the rookies they have in that division that are just going to they could all possibly be a problem for years to come, including Jordan Love, who is just a freak of nature, who we're going to be doing a video on him pretty soon. And that kid is just a freak of nature. But again, this defense, now that it's been bolstered, should be able to contain some of those quarterbacks that are in the division now. But the only reason that they were really allowed to achieve this perfect offseason on the defensive side of the ball was because the offensive unit was just already so excellent. Operating behind a truly elite offensive line, Jared Goff has combined with a very exciting talent in Detroit to make it one of the most exciting offenses to watch week in and week out in the NFL. Like hell, looking back just a couple years ago, who would have thought that this is where we would be just a few years after he was discarded by the Rams? It has been a truly remarkable story for Jared Goff and just one of the most surprising to surround a first overall pick the NFL has ever seen. Like, just the ups and downs of his career have included him taking the Rams to the Super Bowl, only to then be traded out as a part in the Matthew Stafford trade that also included 2 first-round picks and a second-rounder. Like, he was essentially a throwaway bonus in the trade for Detroit, but now 3 years later, he has led the team to an NFC Championship game and earned himself a 4-year, $212 million contract. The assumption was that Goff would just be a bridge quarterback for Detroit, but now he finds himself as the face of the franchise on a Super Bowl ready roster, and the fans clearly adore this guy. Other players that also got locked up this offseason were Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who both arrived in the 2021 draft class and received mega contracts that secure their services through at least 2027. And in handing these contracts out, they've locked up some of the most key players that they needed on this offensive side of the ball. Sewell is one of the best offensive linemen in the league, and St. Brown is one of the best wide receivers, fresh off of a 1,515-yard season and 10 touchdowns alongside that. 2 players who also really helped tip this team over the edge were running back Jahmyr Gibbs and tight end Sam Laporta, who were both selected in the 2023 NFL Draft. Like, as crazy as this sounds, Gibbs just fell 32 yards short of beating Bijan Robinson to the most rushing yards by a rookie in 2023. But his 5.2 yards per carry and 10 rushing touchdowns were much better than Bijan's 4.6 and 4 rushing touchdowns. Gibbs did benefit from being on the much better offense, but he was electrifying with the ball in his hands and did such a great job of converting just on the opportunities that he was allowed to have. Many people were shocked when they did take him initially in the draft, but he is the perfect complement to David Montgomery, who brings the thunder to Gibbs's lightning. Gibbs's fellow rookie Sam Laporta was a revelation at the tight end position. Again, after they traded TJ Hawkinson, not many people knew what they were going to do, but this kid registered 889 yards and led all tight ends with 10 touchdowns. At a position where it typically takes time to adjust to life as a pro, Laporta was immense. He became a reliable target for Goff and projects to be one of the NFL's best tight ends over the next decade at least. An offense led by him and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the receiving game and Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield is an absolute nightmare for defensive coordinators, and one of the reasons that the Lions have blasted open their Super Bowl window. And I think one of the most significant things to come out of the offseason, and honestly probably the biggest thing for this Lions team, was the fact that they were able to retain Ben Johnson as their offensive coordinator. Johnson's offensive game plans have garnered him a lot of attention over recent years, and honestly it was largely assumed he would take on a head coaching role in 2024. Instead, he has decided to stay in Detroit, which tells you all you need to know about how talented this unit is. Like, it truly takes a lot from a coach to turn down a head coaching role, which meant that Johnson thinks he really has a lot to win in Detroit.
He feels like he owes a lot of his career to Dan Campbell. He started as an assistant tight ends coach in Miami, then a tight ends coach in Detroit. He's risen up the ranks. He's not going to leave Dan Campbell until it's absolutely perfect. And I think there's something to be said there. I mean, you mentioned the Sean Payton thing. Everybody talks about that 4th down decision. Say, oh, he was just trusting his gut. No, he was trusting analytics because Sean Payton taught him to look at the opposing sideline and see how scared they are. And if they're scared, keep going for it. Keep going for it on 4th down. So this is marrying football, the gut, and the analytics. Nobody does it as good as Dan Campbell right now.
He is a key figure in a Detroit coaching staff that has worked wonders over the recent years. The man at the top of the pyramid, though, as we all know who he is by far and away not only just the most important person to this team, but honestly just one of the most entertaining coaches to watch in the NFL.
In the coaching cycle last year, everybody was looking for a Dan Campbell type. And I was talking to people in the league saying, You can't find them. They don't exist. Either they're frauds and they're saying they're all about culture, or they're not even pretending to be about culture. Or they're just giving sort of a half-hearted answer when they talk about it. He is one of one. He is ultimately the culture coach in the NFL. Everybody wants one, but they cannot find one.
Initially, Dan Campbell's hiring raised some eyebrows in 2021, and his biting kneecaps comment not long after meant it took some time for people to really take him seriously. I mean, it didn't look good initially when he first took over. He took over a last-place Lions team that had just gone 5-11 with minimal talent to be excited about. A 3-win season to get things started did little to silence the critics about him as well, but since then his Lions team has jumped from 9-8 in 2022 to 12-5 in 2023. The former tight end knows what it takes to win in the NFL, and he clearly knows how to inspire a locker room. His methods have produced headlines and mockery around the league, but ultimately it is the results that coaches are judged on, and he has certainly made incredible progress on that front. Like, to convert a 3-13 team that was just like that 2 years ago to now a perennial powerhouse that was 12-5 in the NFC now really just shows you how talented Dan Campbell is and how fired up he gets these guys week in and week out. Like, it's fair to say this guy is one of the best coaches in the NFL. With him in place and Brad Holmes giving the Lions arguably the best offseason this year, Detroit is set up for success for a long time to come. Their Super Bowl window is wide open and it isn't closing anytime soon. But I want to know what you guys think. How good are the Detroit Lions? What do you think their record's going to be? For me personally, that NFC North is just so stacked that I could honestly see them going 11-6 this year, but that still could even be good enough to win that division, just considering how good everybody is. But let me know in the comment section, how good are the Lions? Are they legit Super Bowl contenders, or are they just going to be pretenders this year? And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.